In the last segment, we saw that the location of the electron is based on the fact that energy is related to wavelength. Energy is related to frequency. There's a big math model that shows 4 quantum numbers that are like an address in an address for, let's say, a house, and that it's based on a principal quantum number, n, which is energy. As n increases, energy increases. The location of the electron is an abbreviation to those 4 quantum numbers, the n, l, m sub l, and m sub s, which can be described similarly to cars or houses, whatever works for you. On the bottom of page 7 is a recap of this idea, which is the location of the electron is based on probability. These are called orbitals. It has to do with energy or energy changes. The places, again, are called orbitals, and orbitals can only have 2 electrons regardless of the type. Section 6 begins here. Other parts of the address describe the shape. Again, the L, the m sub L, and the m sub S is magnetic spin. The s orbital, I'm going to draw a 3-dimensional graph, x, y, and z. Okay, so this paper is flat. This is the x and the y direction, but we know that things have 3 dimensions, so it's like dimension z is pointing towards us. Okay? Now, the S sublevel is the easiest to understand because it looks like a sphere. Okay, so you could think of my fist going through the x-axis as a sphere. Okay, so think of that as a sphere along the x-axis, along the y-axis, and then pointing towards you, the z-axis. A sphere is a sphere is a sphere is a sphere. Okay, so you have to think through and visualize this. Okay, so the actual orbital has one orientation that can handle 2 electrons. The collection of orientation, a sphere along the x-axis is the same as a sphere along the y-axis, is the same as a sphere pointing towards you. Okay? So the collection of orientations we're going to call the sublevel. And there's only one type of orientation along the x, along the y, oopsie, sorry, and along the z. So there's only 2 electrons allowed in an s sublevel. Now the p orbital looks kind of strange. Here's my phone again. Okay, and I don't make this up. This is the math. It looks like a dumbbell. Okay, now I can put 2 electrons along that p orbital in the x direction, but if I have an x, a y, and a z, I can take that p shape and put it along the px or the x-axis. I can orient it along the y. I'll call that a p sub y. I can orient that along the z, p sub z. So it would be kind of like my pen, dumbbell shaped along the x direction, dumbbell shaped along the y direction, and dumbbell shaped pointing towards you. Okay? Now I can put 2 electrons here, 2 electrons here, and 2 electrons here, so my p sublevel can accommodate 6 electrons. The D and the F are very complicated, so I'm just going to draw a box. That's my d orbital, and I can put 2 electrons in that d orbital. My d sublevel, because of the math, has 5 different orientations. And I can put 2 electrons here, 2 electrons here, 2 electrons here, 2 electrons, 2 electrons, for a total of 10 electrons in a D sublevel. F is very similar to electrons, except over here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can put 2 electrons in each orbital. So my F sublevel has 14 electrons. Okay? So again, there's something called an orbital, 2 electrons in each, and they get the labels S, P, D, and F depending on their shape. Okay? I'm sorry about my dog in the background. He's freaking out because he wants to play with the neighbor, but we're just going to ignore him. Okay? S sublevel has only 1 orientation, so 2 electrons max. P sublevel has 1, 2, 3 orientations, so 6 electrons max. D sublevel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 orientations, 10 electrons max. F sublevel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14 electrons max. Okay? Again, kind of analogous to looking for a forward focus, which is the orbital, and then you have different colors. They're the same model, but they have different colors. It's sort of the same idea. Okay? So to recap, S orbital, 2 electrons. S sublevel, 2 electrons. P orbital, 2 electrons. P sublevel, 6 electrons. D orbital, 2 electrons. D sublevel, 10 electrons. F orbital, 2 electrons. F sublevel, 14. Okay, and the energy level increases for each of those kinds. So for example, I can have a 1s where I have the S shape, 1s because this is in n equals 1. Then I can have a 2s because n equals 2. And then I can have a 3s. Oops, I can't look up and draw circles. 4s, 5s, and so forth. Okay? And the S is the easiest one because we think of those as sphericals. So the number in front tells us the n level. Okay? So it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, it can be 4, all the way up to n equals 7. And we can do the same thing with the P's. Well, we can't have a 1p. It doesn't exist. It's the math. But we can have a 2p, a 3p, a 4p, all the way up to 7p, and so forth. Okay? Now, the question is, how does this help us? And I will discuss that in the next segment.